Hey there, just want to do a quick video here on this air compressor slash welder unit, portable unit I've kind of pieced together here in the shop. Started out with just an air compressor, 60-gallon air compressor tank. It's an old vertical. The compressor pump had failed, so we picked it up fairly cheap, and just laid her on her side there. Added some framework just so we could get her sitting the right way. It's got a slight angle on it so it'll drain. The drain's been moved down to where the original air outlet came from, and we've now used this air drain system here, or the old drain just comes up through a regulator into a hose reel that'll be on the passenger side of the truck. Just a 8.8 CFM compressor pump there. Nothing real fancy there. Here we have a 15 horse. We went with the 15 horse because of the electric start. Since we didn't want to jump up into the truck every time to start the engine, we decided we'd want electric. So you can't really, you can get them smaller than that, but we decided to also go with the 15 just to power this 200 amp DC welder that is very old. We actually got it and it was seized up. We managed to free her up. We kind of brought it a little bit, modified it a little bit here, just put some voltage gauges on it and input power gauges. So the welder actually has high and low. It's a 24 volt welder. So when you turn the welder on to low, this here just gives us a bit of a reference point on our input voltage into the shunt. I don't know how useful it'll be, but just kind of, it's more of a reference, I guess, than anything. We moved the remote start off the engine and just put it here where we'd be able to access it from the ground, from the side of the truck. Here we just have our air gauge and our main air outlet. This is the larger port. This would be for like the impacts and airing up tires and stuff. The other side there with the hose reel would be more for nail guns and stuff. So, and then the main tank shutoff is right here. Just kind of, it'd be right behind the driver's side of the cab there, so just a little more of a convenience thing. This here, this controller, it just operates this bullwhip, which throttles the engine down at 125 pounds in the tank. And I believe it fires it back up in around the 95 pounds. And this here is actually an auto idle. I thought this was a safety valve, but it's not. And speaking of that, I did have a safety valve for it and I've broken it, so I just have to get to town to get another one. And I'll find a place to hook it up directly to the tank with no valves intercepting it. Oh, I even threw a little bit of a rod oven here, which the exhaust, I built kind of a cheap little deflector there and deflected it up here, and then in here we can just preheat our rods if needed. I'm not much of a welder there. Oh right, so this valve here switches us from air compressor to welder. It's a little bit aggressive on the higher pressure. I may have to put in a bit of a needle valve or something to slow the flow down a little bit. But the pressure's good as this air cylinder actually works as a shock absorber, and it keeps these belts very, very snug. I'm quite happy with that. And as these belts wear out, because I have more stroke on here than I'm using, it'll adjust to worn belts. And then, of course, someday the belts would have to be changed. So this whole engine just sits on a big 3/16 plate that rocks on 1-inch seamless with a 1-inch center pin. So I've just tack welded some washers on there as retainers, and if the engine or plate ever had to come off, it'd just be a matter of tapping that with a hammer or touching it with a grinder. So it's kind of that side there. This side here, we just have the batteries that are switched from series to parallel. So we have a 12 volt engine, but we need 24 volts for the welder and high. So I've rigged up a a double pole, double throw switch that'll actually join these in series, or it'll join them in parallel. So I can charge both batteries when it's in parallel. The welder has to be on low or not welding, we could just be compressing air, which is when this battery would get its charge. And then in 24, we're only charging the first battery. So since we're only charging the first battery, I've only taken 12 volt draws off the first battery as well. This battery is going to suffer. There's not a heck of a lot I can do about that without getting real complicated. So it's actually a weaker battery to start with. These are just garden tractor batteries. So also thrown on some lights here, and I've made them just so that you can adjust them, and if you want you can even turn them, just so that if you're working beside the truck or in the box of the truck, you have the option, I guess, to adjust the lights. Went with 3/8 copper as the main feed from the compressor, and this is the old outlet port of the compressor. Now it's the inlet, and there is a little bit of an exhaust line there. You might see that port there, and that just goes back down to the exhaust on this control valve there, right there. And there's a little bit of a muffler, I guess they call it. So just kind of a bit of a walkthrough. I don't know what else there is to say other than nice big lifting hook here. Tested it in the shop with my overhead to try and find center, so quite fairly happy with that. All in all, she's virtually ready for the road, I think. I may have to do something to bolt it down to the truck in the case of strong braking application. It's fairly sturdy, not so much on this rickety old floor, but as a safety measure, it might be a good idea. And the other thing I might contemplate would be just covering the whole thing over, as we're in the northern climate and we tend to get the odd foot or three of snow. So anyways, thanks for watching.